Olbermann, who kind of goes off in his own description of who these people are. Do we have that?
An elected Republican official today leading a protest on the west steps of the Capitol that compared health care reform to Nazi death camps and encouraged mindless harassment of and possibly violence against the government. Not teabaggers anymore, not demagogic commentators, an actual congresswoman inciting a hateful rebellion against the rule of law and order. Her name is Michelle Bachmann.
I think, first of all, somebody has a little crush on Michelle Bachmann.
Yeah, oh, my goodness.
That's pretty obvious.
You only hate the one you love.
He's doing the TV equivalent of pulling her pigtails.
Yeah, that's true. The fact is, though, if you do look at, like, Republican and conservative women, they are so much hotter than the left, and it's driving Olbermann crazy. He doesn't know what to do. But, I mean, okay, he's calling it a hateful rebellion. He's calling it an orgy of veiled threats. And essentially, the Republican Party has now become a party of white power, portraying people who are protesting the health care bill, tea parties, or they like to call them teabaggers, because that apparently is a really funny joke.
It's hysterical.
It is hysterical. If you're at a Starbucks and you want to impress the barista,
absolutely,
make a teabagger joke.
Yep,
make a teabagger joke.
Can't get enough.
Oh my God! The interesting thing I find about this is the whole idea of how you can no longer speak truth to power. Olbermann should be supporting people who speak truth to power because, he considers himself a renegade. But however, he's in power. He agrees with everything. So in that case, you're just a dirty, stinking racist.
Didn't we learn last week that it's the White House that is speaking truth to power?
Yes, that is true. That is true. What was her name?
Was that Valerie Jarrett?
Yeah, she's an attractive woman as well.
She is.
She is. For the Democrats, she is an attractive woman. Put her next to Janet Napolitano, she's a 10.
And they have that Buffy girl.
Hey, Ann, are you there?
Why, yes, I am. Hello, Greg Gutfeld.
How are you, dear?
Fine,
let me introduce you. By the way, I'm Greg Gutfeld, and I'm with Andy Levy. We're in for John GIbson. I forget to do the important stuff because I'm so excited to talk to you. Let's plug your book. It's called Guilty, and it comes out in paperback next week. I don't think you sell enough books, and I really don't think you do. So, have you ever heard that song before?
Yes, I have. It's very popular with radio hosts introducing me.
Wow. You know that I've never heard it. I'm really impressed.
It's a nice little song, isn't it? It's like a Beach Boys song. Yeah. I actually like it besides the lyrics.
Well, I got to say, there's one line in there that's, I wonder if she has a boyfriend. So I'm wondering if you have a boyfriend.
Greg, you know I love you, but you know I will never answer that.
I know. I'll just have to stick to following you home after you do red eye and hanging outside your apartment, building a makeshift shrine out of cat bones.
Wait, but can we get back to my, what's the antithesis? It's like the antimatter boyfriend, Keith Olbermann.
Yes, please.
Because you have that quote you played, and, surprisingly, I find myself disagreeing with Keith here.
What?
Really?
Cut it out, Ann.
I thought you were such a big fan, but you always tell me you love Keith Olbermann because he provides you with so much.
Yes, it's like watching Jerry Springer.
Yeah.
And in fact, I watched last night. I almost watched twice because if I were ever teaching a class on douchebaggery, that would be what the segment I would show. That first like half hour. I mean, that was like classic. That will go in the Keith Olbermann Museum someday. And one thing I think it's worth mentioning. I know Keith is totally down with the brothers, but this idea that there aren't enough blacks and brown people at the tea parties. One thing I've seen videos and photos all over the internet, as I'm sure you have, of these tea parties. Oh, there are plenty of black people. Considering that we don't have a lot of blacks in the Republican Party, sorry, that's not our fault. But how about we did have at one of the very early tea parties in St. Louis. Yes, there was a black man, and he was beaten to a pulp by union members, by that SEIU, to the point that he got hospitalized. If they're going to fixate on beating up the blacks at our tea parties, maybe fewer of them will show up, and then they turn around and complain there aren't enough blacks.
Well, one thing I thought was that struck me was when you mentioned the future Keith Olbermann Museum. I was just wondering that I know it's going to smell like vapor rub. I just have that feeling it'll smell like vapor rub. I don't know.
Yes, that's important.
Hey, Ann, I got a question for you. I thought it was really revealing when Keith said, that he was shocked that the organizers of the healthcare thing didn't think to themselves, hey, even if we have to pay them to show up, we need to get some black people and some brown people, because isn't that in a lot of ways, isn't that how the left views politics? It's this whole identity politics thing, and it's like, well, we'll throw the black people something to get them on board. That's what they basically do. They pay off various groups to join their coalition.
That is a great point. That is a great point. And, yeah, you can always see into the soul of a liberal by what they accuse you of. And, in fact, I mean, at a smaller level, I like your larger point, but at a smaller level, yeah, it's well known that Acorn goes out and pays protesters, generally these disgruntled Acorn types, to show up. That's why Nancy Pelosi was talking about how well-dressed the Tea Party ralliers were. I don't know, I saw them. They didn't look particularly uniquely well-dressed to me, but they weren't, just Acorn thugs being dragged out of their public housing and given a box lunch and $10 to go protest something. But no, I love your point that, here, we'll give you a gift, now go away for the next 4 years. And particularly the Democrats do that with blacks. I mean, there were manifestly more blacks higher up, other than the president himself, in the Bush administration, in real positions like Secretary of State, first black woman Secretary of State, and whom Bush clearly seriously relied on, than there are in the Obama administration. Quite to the contrary, he turns around and starts attacking Roland Burris, who took his seat for the Senate, and Governor Patterson, the governor of New York. I mean, they didn't even give Patterson 5 minutes. I don't like Patterson because he's a Democrat. They immediately dismiss any black office holder.
Mm-hmm. Just to remind you, I'm the host of the show, so when you compliment anybody, you should be complimenting me on the questions and not on Andy. You know what? The other thing that bothers me about this, it's not just about race; it's about violence. And you notice with the you look at the WTO protest, that was actually made into a movie, Battle from Seattle, in which there are people destroying property. But if you look at any of the Tea Party protests or the town hall protests, there's no violence except maybe a guy got his finger bitten off, but that was by a liberal. And
the violence at these things has been committed by liberals, including the most spectacular and famous one at the St. Louis Tea Party protest. Oh, and then there was the black Tea Partier who showed up, I think it was in Colorado, who happens to be a big fan of the Second Amendment and showed up with his legal automatic weapon.
No, and I was watching MSNBC. That guy was white.
Yeah.
I know. Thank you. And then they cut him out. So why should blacks show up? They don't get covered. They're lied about. They're called white, and they get beaten up. I also think it has to be mentioned that the signs they were showing on the Pompous Douchebag show last night, demonstrating the angry violence of these, happy Tea Partiers, were things like a gravestone with "Kill the Bill."
Yeah.
It's all over the healthcare bill. Their idea of a violent sign and violent, they're like fainting Victorian ladies. Go cover the piano legs.
Yeah, but my theory is that the protests that they romanticize involve people that don't own anything. So you can have people throwing chairs through windows because they don't own the chairs or the windows, and you can't see that. And generally, that's why the Tea Parties and whatnot are like picnics, because those are people go home with their belongings. And we got to wrap it up. Always a pleasure talking to you. And we'll see you on Red Eye, I'm sure, very soon.
Hopefully next week.
You got it. And the book is Guilty. Everybody buy another copy so she can afford a second mansion.
John GIbson of Fixed News, today's worst person in the world.
Always striving to be the worst to bathtub boy.
You should crawl off into a hole and die.
But the best to you. John GIbson.